Hello and welcome everybody. After a long time period, now we are going to record a new session about how to install SQL Server. We are going to install SQL Server on our Windows operating system, and later on we will install SQL Server Management Studio SSMS on our machine or laptop or can say computers to how to derive the database stored in the SQL Server that is managed by the SQL Server using SSMS. So let's start our process by downloading the SQL Server Management Studio. We are going to any browser. I would like to use Google Chrome. The second step is to type here. We are going to type here just download SQL Server. The first or second link will be our required link. As we can see here, this link is the required link to download or install the SQL Server Management SQL Server Studio. Click on this link. This will go to the second page, that is the official website page of SQL Server. We can see here this is owned by the Microsoft. This is Microsoft SQL Server download page. We have to download SQL Server from here. Would you like to participate? I just click on no. What is the next step? Next step is to select here the Express edition of the SQL Server. We are going here to select the Express edition of the SQL Server from here. These editions are the cloud-based editions. We can see here we would like to install it on our Windows or Linux or Unix machine, so that we will have to go with the Express edition, that is here. Just click on download button. The download will be start here as per your browser that is using. We are going to install this SQL Server Express edition. Click on the installer that is provided in the download menu. Click on yes to install the SQL Server. I would like to clear you, I have already installed SQL Server Express edition on my computer, on my personal machine. I would like to show you some steps that are required for the installation of the SQL Server Studio. These are the basic, custom and download media that will contain any help files or setup files, etc. We will go through the basic, and after this screen we will accept the license or agreement provided by the SQL Server Microsoft edition, Express edition. I would appreciate or encourage you to read these guidelines or terms and conditions for the installation of the SQL Server. After that we will click on the accept. The installation process will be the start. I have already told you that I have already installed the SQL Server on my computer. I would like to just launch this SQL Server by just going to the pressing on the start button. Type here the SQL Server Management Studio. The SQL Server Management Studio will be shown here. The second step after installation of the SQL Server on machine, we would have to install the SQL Server Management Studio. This is the important software that is required for the manipulation, that is required for the different operations to be performed on the SQL Server databases. This is called SQL Server Management Studio. It is mandatory for each and every computers to have a SQL Server Management Studio for the interaction to the databases that are available, that are created in the SQL Server. Basically this is the software that is mandatory before the retrieval of the database. It is mandatory to create the database and manipulate the database in the SQL Server. Okay, let's talk about this, how we can install this SQL Server Management Studio. Just again go to the browser. I am going to the Google Chrome. Type here download SQL Server Management Studio. The first link is signed out. First link is our required link, that is showing the download page of the SQL Server Management Studio. we can see here this is the URL that contains the address of the download page for the SQL Server Management Studio, and we can also see here this is the download description of the SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, before wasting any time, we will have to click on this option. The first option that we can easily see here, this is the download SSMS, available languages, etc. Other options are also available here on the download page, but we will have to just click on download SSMS. After clicking on download SSMS, here is the version specification of the SSMS. We will have to click on the 2.2 version is available for the SQL Server Management Studio. This will take a lot of time. Aside that, the SQL Server is downloaded in just a few seconds, because this is the online version that will retrieve the online available files or data files from the server later on the installation process. But this SSMS is approximately, if we look at this, this is approximately of 448 MB. This will take a time depending on your internet connection speed. I would like to clear that I have already installed this SQL Server Management Studio on my machine. I will just like to show you the steps how we can install this SQL Server Management Studio on our computer. Okay, SQL Server Management Studio installer is downloaded successfully, but this is not a magic that I have done in a seconds. I have just paused this video in this video session so that the time would not be waste. Okay, click on this installer. The installer will be opened. It is going to open the SQL Server Management Studio installer. Okay, now look on the options available in the installer of the Visual Studio Management Studio, SQL Server Management Studio. Here are the options to change the directory of the installation. Here is the agreement. We can also read the privacy statement or the documentation about the SQL Server Management Studio. Later on, as we will go through the SQL Server Management Studio for the implementation or manipulation of the database using SQL Server, we will later go on steadily. Here I will suggest to just click on the install button. The SQL Server Management Studio will be installed on our machines. I have already told you that the SQL Server Management Studio, I am just going to close this SQL Server Management Studio installation process. I have already have the SQL Server Management Studio installed in our machine. So that the interface, I would like to show you the interface of the SQL Server Management Studio. Later on this SQL Server Management Studio playlist, I will go through the SQL Server Management Studio options, interface options in detail. Okay, this is our interface of SQL Server Management Studio. I would like to explain some fundamental concepts, fundamental objects or components of the SQL Server Management Studio. This dialog window pop-up will automatically appear whenever we launch SQL Server Management Studio. This is telling about the default configuration, default server setting, default database engine, and we have later on further options that will be discussed in the SQL Server Management Studio session while exploring the SQL Server Management Studio. In today's session, just this is sufficient to click on the connect button. This SQL Server Management Studio will connect to the SQL Server that we have already installed in the start of this session. Here is the databases, and later on we will discuss the other aspects of the SQL Server Management Studio that are mandatory for the implementation and the creation and data retrieval of the database systems for the database management system. Thanks for watching. I would like to appreciate for the subscription and like our channel videos. Thanks.